Okay, so if we continue with our understanding of ecology and evolution as this metaphor of a theater and a play, we now have complete definitions of everything we need, right? So we understand ecology is primarily interactions that are going on among individuals that may be the same or different species, and also with the environment. We understand evolution by natural selection to be due to heritable variation, a struggle for existence, and that the variation can influence the struggle. Right? So importantly for ecology, the outcome of interactions depends on the alleles that are around. In other words, it depends on the traits. Right? We already talked about if you have alleles for a blue flower and a red flower, maybe pollinators prefer the blue flowers. The struggle for existence on the evolution side of things is, of course, going to depend on the outcome of interactions, right? If a bee only goes to those blue flowers, that's going to lead to influence in the struggle to survive and reproduce. And what I've done is I've colored parts of this in red and in blue, right? So the red tells us the parts that are related to ecology, and the blue tells us the part that are related to genetics. And remember, there are more forces of evolution than just natural selection, right? There's 4 in total. Natural selection is just one of the 4 forces of evolution, but the other 3 are usually connected to the recipe of genetics, the recipe of inheritance, right? So genetic drift, mutation, and gene flow, these are all products of the way genetics works here on Earth. And I like saying it that way because you could imagine on other planets there might be differences in the way that traits are inherited. It doesn't have to be through DNA, it doesn't have to be through the genetic recipe as it works here on Earth, but you could still get all the red parts. So different recipes of inheritance would change the details of the genetics, but they probably wouldn't change the struggle for survival and reproduction. So I wanted to go back to this slide that Damon has used. I know he's used it in the past. Hopefully he used it this year too. And he gave you an example of, to imagine an island with neutral heritable variation. So this is our red and our blue flowers, let's say, right? So we start out on an island. Okay, Damon calls it orange. But we start out with 5 of each, right? So here's 5 of each. And they are true breeding, right? So the blue gives rise to more blue, the orange gives rise to more orange. So there's no kind of Mendelian genetics going on here. If we just sort of track this forward and allow for deaths, so the ecological, the struggle to survive and reproduce, if we allow that to be random as well, what Damon showed is that it's possible to get the same or different ratios for really no reason at all, right? So if the variation is neutral, we really can't predict anything. It's just genetic drift in the parlance of what we're talking about. But if the variation is not neutral, it changes according to natural selections. And as we've seen with the dog example, we can begin to make some predictions. So if we want to understand the distribution and abundance of individuals, which I would argue is the central question in ecology, and we want to understand what controls the diversity of life, which is arguably the central question in evolution, we need a theory that combines the two. And I'm going to suggest that evolutionary game theory is a tool that uses the idea of natural selection as a bridge between ecology and evolution.